In the heart of New York City, during the chaotic years of post-war America, a young boy named Donald John Trump was growing up inside a world driven by ambition and competition. Born in 1946 to Fred and Mary Trump, Donald was raised in Queens, a place filled with working-class dreams and the roaring sound of construction cranes. His father, Fred Trump, was a successful real estate developer, building middle-income housing for returning soldiers. From a very young age, Donald was fascinated by the idea of building big, thinking bold, and standing out from the crowd. By the time he was a teenager, Donald had already begun showing his fiery spirit at the New York Military Academy, where he was sent at the age of 13. He learned disciplined leadership and the power of commanding presence. While others saw military school as punishment, Trump saw it as training for life competition. And someday power, he stood tall in parades, earned top ranks, and developed the confidence that would later define his public persona. After graduating, Donald entered the Wharton School of Finance at the University of Pennsylvania, one of the most prestigious business schools in America. There he studied economics. But what truly shaped him was not the textbooks. It was the ambition burning inside him. He watched Manhattan's skyline and dreamed. One day the name Trump will shine across that city. In the early 1970s, Donald joined his father's company, Elizabeth Trump and Son, which focused on middle-class housing in Brooklyn and Queens. But Donald wasn't satisfied with small-scale success. He wanted Manhattan, the world stage. With boldness and risk-taking that shocked even his father, he moved the company's focus to luxury developments. His first major victory came with the Commodore Hotel deal, which he transformed into the famous Grand Hyatt New York. That moment wasn't just about business. It was about making his mark. As the 1980s arrived, Trump became a symbol of American ambition. He built Trump Tower, a 58-story skyscraper of glass and gold that stood as a monument to his vision. The media loved him, cameras followed him. Everywhere he became more than a businessman. He was a brand, a celebrity, a living example of the American dream. But Trump's rise was not without struggle. The late 1980s brought economic turbulence. His empire, built on loans and bold deals, began to crumble under debt. Casinos in Atlantic City, luxury yachts, and airline ventures started losing money. Critics said he was finished. Yet in his own words, "I don't like to lose and I never quit." He restructured his companies, renegotiated with banks, and slowly began rebuilding his empire. Through the 1990s and 2000s, Trump transformed himself again, this time into a media personality. His hit TV show, The Apprentice, turned him into a household name. Millions watched as he pointed his finger and said the words, "You're fired." The show wasn't just entertainment, it was the construction of a persona, the tough, no-nonsense leader who could fix anything. By the early 2010s, America was facing political frustration, division and distrust in traditional politicians. Trump never wanted to stay quiet, saw an opportunity. He spoke about borders, jobs, and America's lost greatness. His words divided many, but they also inspired millions. In 2015, he announced his candidacy for President of the United States, standing beneath golden letters that spelled Trump, a moment that changed modern political history. People laughed. At first, the political establishment saw him as a joke, but slowly his rallies filled stadiums, his speeches raw and direct, connected with people who felt unheard. The media tried to tear him down, but every headline made him stronger. And by November 2016, against all odds, Donald J. Trump became the 45th President of the United States. As he took the oath of office standing before the U.S. Capitol, his journey came full circle. From a boy in Queens with a dream to the most powerful office on earth. Yet for Donald Trump, it wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of another fight, one that would define his legacy in history. When Donald J. Trump took the oath of office in January 2017, the world watched in disbelief and fascination. Some called it a revolution, others called it chaos, but for Trump it was a victory for the forgotten men and women of America. He promised to drain the swamp to rebuild the nation. and to put America first. His message was clear and his tone unfair. From the very first day his presidency broke every political rule. His cabinet was filled with outsiders, generals, billionaires, and loyalists who believed in his vision. The media clashed with him from day one, yet Trump thrived on conflict. He used Twitter as his direct weapon, bypassing traditional press and speaking straight to the American people. His policies were bold and controversial. He cut taxes, withdrew from global agreements, and reshaped trade deals with China, Canada, and Mexico. He pushed for stronger borders and tougher immigration laws, sparking nationwide debates and protests. But behind the controversy was a strategy to rebuild American industry and pride. The world reacted sharply. Allies questioned his style, rivals tested his strength, but Trump stood firm, calling out unfair trade practices and pushing NATO allies to pay their fair share. He believed America should lead from strength, not compromise, and his words echoed across every continent. Back home, his supporters saw him as a warrior against a corrupt system. He spoke to those who felt forgotten, those who believed Washington had ignored them for decades. His rallies became massive, energetic movements filled with chants of "Make America Great Again." But inside the White House, the pressure was constant. Investigations, media battles, and political opposition tested his patience and will. He faced impeachment trials, accusations, and endless criticism, yet Trump remained defiant, often saying, "They are not after me, they are after you, and I am just in the way." Despite the chaos, his administration saw major achievements: record low unemployment before the pandemic, historic peace agreements in the Middle East, and massive deregulation that boosted small businesses. Supporters called it the Trump boom. Critics refused to acknowledge it, but the impact was real, visible, and measurable. Then came the storm, the year 2020. A global pandemic swept across the world, shaking economies and testing leadership everywhere. Trump faced his greatest challenge. The media attacked his handling of the crisis. While he claimed victory in saving millions of lives, the nation divided further. As the election approached, America was on edge. The rallies returned, the debates grew fiery, and the country seemed split in half. On one side, Trump's loyal base; on the other, his fierce opponents. It became not just an election, but a battle for the soul of America. When the results came in, Trump refused to concede. He claimed fraud and injustice, and his supporters echoed his words. The nation descended into turmoil. Protests erupted, and January 6 became a dark moment in history. For some, he was a hero who fought for truth. For others, a symbol of division. And as his term ended, Trump left the White House, but not the stage. He told the world, "We will be back." His era was not over. It was a chapter in a story that was still being written. The Trump movement had become more than politics. It had become history. When Donald Trump left the White House in January 2021, the world thought his story had ended. But for Trump, defeat was never the final word. He moved to Florida, to his Mar-a-Lago estate, surrounded by loyal supporters who believed the fight was not over. For months he stayed quiet, but behind the silence a new plan was taking shape. The political establishment tried to erase him. Social media platforms banned him, corporations distanced themselves, and critics declared his career finished. But Trump thrived under pressure. He built his own platforms, created new networks, and began speaking again to his massive base. Millions tuned into his rallies, hungry for his words and energy. The investigations continued. Accusations never stopped, yet Trump's popularity refused to fade. He called it the greatest witch hunt in American history, and every attempt to silence him only made his movement stronger. His supporters believed he had been wronged, and that he was still the only one who could bring back the America they loved. As years passed, his influence reshaped the Republican Party. It was no longer the same old system. It was the Trump era. His endorsements decided elections, his speeches filled arenas, and his slogan, "Make America Great Again," became more than politics. It became identity, a belief, a declaration. He began hinting at a return, teasing the world with the possibility of another run for the presidency. Reporters asked, will he do it? And he smiled, saying, you will be very happy. His rallies grew even bigger, his words sharper, and his message clearer. America will rise again. For his opponents, it was fear. For his followers, it was hope. Either way, Trump remained at the center of the storm. Every headline, every debate, every discussion led back to his name. Trump was no longer just a former president. He had become a movement that refused to die. He faced trials, indictments, and endless controversy, but he stood tall, calling them political attacks. His voice remained strong, his message unbroken. They want to stop me because I stand for you, he said, and his supporters roared louder than ever. Through every storm, Trump showed the same fire that began in Queens decades ago, the same belief that nothing was impossible. He had been businessman, showman, president, and now symbol of rebellion and determination. In the end, Donald J. Trump's story became more than politics. It became the story of American defiance, a man who refused to quit, a leader who turned criticism into fuel and defeat into rebirth. Love him or hate him, his journey changed history forever. And as the sun sets on one chapter and rises on another, the world still asks the same question. Will Donald Trump return, or has he already won by becoming unforgettable? Carson. End of story. The rise, the power, and the legacy of Donald J. Trump. If you enjoyed this story of power, ambition, and history, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with those who believe in chasing greatness.